The story begins with a king who is classified as the most powerful king on earth fighting a deadly war against an invader. But he soon died after the leader of the invaders planted his sword in his body to find himself floating in another world. Then he heard the voice of an unknown bird telling him to look for the light in his new life. After that, the king woke up to find himself in the body of a baby boy named Arthur, and his parents caressed him. And he realized that he would start a new life from scratch without being able to control the functions of his body. And his father told him that his name is Reynold, while his mother's name is Alice. Arthur felt sorry for himself to end up as a helpless child after he was the strongest king and won all the battles he fought before his death. Although he was relieved that his parents took good care of him and tried to ignore his feeling of fear because he was always put in embarrassing situations in front of them because of being a child, which made him feel that his body was like a prison. Afterward, Arthur watches his father practice using his special magical power that helps him strengthen his body, and when he is hit by a small rock, Alice uses her healing magic while Arthur feels strange as this seems like an unfamiliar power to him, but at the same time he finds it interesting. Over time, Arthur decided that he had to gain strength as soon as possible after realizing that people in this world are allowed to own weapons of all kinds. And when his father Reynold returned from a quick mission, Alice decided to take him for a nap, and Arthur felt angry that he could not complain. But even so, he saw that this life was not bad, as he was not used to sleeping safely in his previous life because of the many enemies. After a few months, Arthur began to crawl and his parents were happy that he had grown a little, while Arthur was surprised to see his miserable face in the reflection of the mirror for the first time, and he still hadn't gotten used to his new name despite the time he had spent with his parents until now. One day, Alice put him in his bed to go to sleep, and after she left, Arthur sneaked into the study without attracting attention. And because knowledge is a weapon, Arthur decided to use his childhood to read and learn more about the world so that he can gain strength. While reading a history book, he found that he is currently in the kingdom of Sabine, and his country is surrounded by the kingdoms of Darth, which belongs to the dwarves, and Alenoir, which is inhabited by the elves. Then he realized that the monarchy in this country is inherited by the royal family and is not taken away. Over time, Arthur realized that this world is still evolving and found a book that explained why their technology is relatively primitive. And the reason is due to the magic that is created through Mon, which is present in the body of 1 in 100 people in this world, and most mages draw their power from early puberty to late adolescence. Arthur tried to activate his magical power based on the knowledge he had gained from the book as well as knowledge from a previous life about a concept similar to magic but related to human physical energy. As he was about to activate his Mon, Alice caught him and gently scolded him for disturbing her.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
As she continued to stare at him, Arthur became confused, thinking that she had noticed his attempt to use magic. But it turned out that she realized that he had defecated on himself while reading the books. 2 years after Arthur's birth, Alice was writing in her diary, admiring how funny he was, but puzzled that she'd never seen him smile. She was soon surprised to see him practicing fencing with his father in the courtyard. She headed outside, angry at Reynold, who had started teaching him to use a sword when he had just learned to walk. And as she scolded him, Arthur realized that through their 2-year relationship, the world was basically ruled by women. Afterward, Alice took him to the mall and went shopping. Arthur felt that coming here had provided him with valuable information in understanding this world and its weapons and materials. Although he felt uncomfortable with his life as an infant, he felt good about his parents' treatment of him, having been orphaned in a previous life and spent his childhood in an orphanage, and wondered if families were always like that. Alice saw that he had inherited Reynold's curiosity and reading and expected that he would one day want to run away and explore the world as his father had done. But she preferred that he chose to live a quiet life. The next day, Arthur watched his father train and thought he was lucky to have someone he could learn how to use magic from. When his mother picked him up to take him to bed, he mentioned that he wanted to read some books. Alice refused at first, telling him it was nap time. But when he stared at her with his innocent, childlike gaze, she couldn't resist and told him she would only let him read for a short time. After she left, Arthur tried to unleash the magical power within him. While his parents were outside, a loud explosion hit the house. Reynold jumped on top of Alice to protect her and his back was burned. Then they remembered that they had left Arthur inside and rushed to check on him. They were shocked to see him flying through the air after he managed to activate his magical energy even though he was not even 3 years old. After that, Arthur stood in front of them as if declaring his victory after spending 2 years of his life studying and learning. Suddenly, the ceiling almost collapsed on his head and his parents jumped towards him and Alice used healing magic to protect him while Reynold strengthened his body to destroy the ceiling before it reached them. Arthur realized that they would make sure he was safe at all costs after he was about to die again. And the 3 of them ended up crying in each other's embrace and ended up crying in each other's arms. Arthur remembered in his previous life when someone tried to assassinate him and was caught. and then he was sentenced to return home with his wife and son to await another death sentence. The man begged Arthur to spare his wife and son and told him that returning home was worse than death. But Arthur decided to carry out the sentence before his eyes and caused the death of his wife and son with a single swing of his sword. In the present, Reynolds gave Arthur new gloves to become like him in the use of magic, but Arthur refused to take them and preferred the wooden sword because the weapon does not fit his current body. Then they started practicing sparring together, and Arthur succeeded in beating his father and smashing his sword amidst Reynolds' amazement that he became stronger in a short time, which made him decide to bring him a suitable teacher for training. When Alice heard this, she refused and told him to continue to train him himself. He told her that he is very talented, so he wants to make him train with a real teacher to gain a lot of experience, and then pointed to his broken sword and told her that he could do it when he was only 4 years old. Although Alice is convinced that Reynolds is right, she still refuses to let Arthur live in a city far away from her, and while they are still arguing about it, Arthur thinks that feelings can sometimes narrow one's horizons, so he suggests that they all move to another city, and then the argument stops and the parents are eager to pack their belongings and accompany him to the city. Arthur then met Adam and his friends. Adam thought he didn't remember him as they had met 2 years ago, but Arthur remembered who he was, as he had come to help his parents after he had caused their house to explode, as they were former members of his band. Adam, Angela, Durden, and Helen introduce themselves to him, and as they all interact with him, Arthur notices a girl standing quietly by herself, and Helen tells him that her name is Jasmine. Arthur remembers the transportation in his previous life, which was more like a space rocket than a vehicle like the one he's riding in. But it's not so bad. Then they all decided to take a break for a while to eat, and while they were sitting together they were surprised by the appearance of a group of wolves to attack them. But Arthur and his companions managed to get rid of them effortlessly, and Arthur admired the movement and fighting power of Adam's squad and wanted to become like them soon. Alice notices Reynolds' injured arm and decides to heal it while everyone else watches the surrounding area for any attacks. Arthur thinks that his mother might become a target because healing witches like her are rare, which is one of the reasons why she chose to live with Reynolds in the countryside. Arthur is surprised when Adam asks Reynolds to borrow it for a while to practice before going to bed and ends up confronting him with a wooden sword while Adam uses his usual spear. Arthur realizes that he has no intention of going easy on him and decides to attack him. To everyone's surprise, he uses 2 types of magic at once, but Adam manages to block him and exchange blows with him. Suddenly, Arthur is blown away by a blow from Adam and almost gets hurt, but Angela intervenes and helps him land safely with wind magic. Then everyone scolded Adam for continuing to train while Jasmine was curious to know how Arthur was able to use 2 types of magic together. The next day, everyone continued their journey and Arthur continued to train with everyone and learn new things while Jasmine watched him in silence. A few days later, Jasmine expressed her gratitude to him for teaching her a lot during their trip and gave him a gift for his birthday, and Arthur realized that he had won her admiration. And before they continued their journey, he noticed that his mother was not feeling well, but she pretended otherwise in front of him. During their journey, they are surprised by bandits who appear out of nowhere and start attacking them. Then the leader appears, intending to take the women and children with him to sell them as slaves, and Arthur realizes that they are completely surrounded. Arthur and Alice stayed inside the carriage, and as time went on, everyone began to feel tired due to the large number of bandits, and Reynolds was badly damaged, but he decided to keep fighting and prevent Alice from using her power to heal him so that he wouldn't reveal her to them. Reynolds tells Arthur to take her and run away. Arthur tells him that he can fight with them, but Reynolds asks him to use his power to protect his pregnant mother. Arthur is surprised and realizes why Alice has been so tired throughout the journey. Arthur decided to comply with his request, took his mother and fled immediately while Reynolds bought them time by confronting the bandit leader face to face, and then helped the rest of them escape without being attacked while Arthur thought about how he ended up running away for fear of losing something while causing the death of a family in front of their father's eyes. On their way, they were attacked by a thief. Arthur decided to sacrifice himself and pushed Alice away so that he could take the full damage alone. He then used the knife that Jasmine gave him when he realized that he was about to fall off the edge of the mountain and managed to pull the thief with him using the rope on the handle of the knife. As he falls, Arthur realizes that it feels good to save his mother even though he didn't gain anything, and understands what the man in his past life was asking of him when he wanted to save his family at all costs. And that sacrificing yourself to save your family makes you shed tears because you will never see them again like he did, and Arthur feels that he will die before he becomes a big brother. Arthur ended up standing in front of a giant black monster inside a cave, and was shocked by the fact that he already knew its name. When he tried to attack it, the monster easily blocked him and pushed him away, then told him that he still had a lot to learn. Then told him that he was an ally and gave him some food so that he could keep moving, and told him to consider himself lucky to be alive. Arthur began to eat greedily and then asked the monster if he knew where his parents were. The monster replied that he can't leave this place, but he has the ability to see far. Then he saw through the monster's power what happened in the area where they were attacked and found that the bandits were all dead, and the monster told him that his family had continued their journey for days. Arthur was relieved that they were all alive and began to cry out of happiness, and when he wondered about his identity, it turned out that the monster was a female named Sylvia, and Arthur spent a few days with her in that mysterious place, doing nothing but eating until his injuries healed. Although he could not return to the rest because he is in a place full of wild animals and bandits and will be in danger if he thinks of going out, Arthur decides to start training so that he can return to his parents. Over time, he notices that Sylvia doesn't talk about herself, and despite her terrifying appearance, she is kind, and while he is training to use magic, Sylvia is surprised that he has mana at this age. He was surprised to see her collecting her own mana while using magic at the same time. She told him that it was very easy for mana monsters like her and offered to train him in the technique. When Arthur is eager to learn more, Sylvia tells him that he will become stronger and asks him what he plans to do with the knowledge once he has it. Arthur replies that he will eliminate anyone who tries to take away his family, but he ends up flying away after Sylvia snaps her fingers in his face and tells him that she would never teach someone with such an expression on her face. Arthur is surprised that she resents the idea of him eliminating his enemies. She tells him that she can easily tear him apart with her hands, and at the same time she is able to touch him gently and make him feel safe, which means that violence is a product of anger and hatred inside him, and asks him not to waste the life she saved on something like that. To Arthur's surprise, she seems to know everything about him somehow. When she asks again, he tells her that he wants to protect his family and friends, and Sylvia decides to start teaching him her power. Arthur remembered that in his previous life he was only a king in name only because all the power was in the hands of the parliament, and he only had a role in waging wars, and while the speaker was praising him, Arthur decided to give it all up and leave. After that, he began to learn his new technique and remembered that all he wanted in his previous life was to be able to control his physical energy so that he could continue to win against his enemies. After he succeeded in learning the new technique, Sylvia pushed him away. He ended up behind a rock and found her telling him not to make any noise. Arthur saw a monster similar to Sylvia standing in front of her, but with an evil aura, and attacked her when she refused to accompany him. Sylvia unleashed her power and transformed into a white dragon and began a thunderous attack on the monster. Although she realized that using so much power could cost her her life, she didn't care and continued to attack it. While they were fighting, Sylvia realized that Arthur's life was in danger and decided to help him get away. Using her ability to stop time, she told him that she had taught him enough to survive on his own, and then opened a breach to get him to the nearest exit. Sylvia decided to give him a gift before he left. She gave him an egg and a feather and told him to take care of it. Arthur found drawings on his arm, and Sylvia told him that he would know what they were when the time came. She confessed that she could have sent him home immediately, but she enjoyed spending time with him, and Arthur felt ashamed that he couldn't protect him even though he was getting stronger, and wondered if the time he spent with her had changed him. He tells Sylvia that he considers her his family, no matter what she is, and wants to protect her as he promised. She tells him that he has two parents, and Arthur decides to call her his grandmother, which causes her to start crying because she can't live with him any longer. Sylvia ends up falling to the ground after being hit by the monster's thunderous attack, but she decides to take him with her to her death, and attacks him one last time, causing a huge explosion that spreads beyond the forest. Meanwhile, Arthur is traveling through the portal when he hears Sylvia asking him if he still remembers what she taught him. He tells her that he feels sad, and she tells him that he should turn sadness into happiness since the world is always full of sadness, and finally asks him not to let anger and hatred fill his heart. Arthur was surprised that Sylvia knew about his past life and that he was the most powerful king, which made him suspect that she was the one who brought him to this world. And after he was alone in the forest, he decided to fulfill the promise he made with her and use his strength to survive until he returns to his family. Arthur hears screams nearby and climbs to a higher elevation to see what's going on, and finds that a carriage is being attacked by bandits who have captured an elf girl and plan to sell her. Arthur remembers what the bandits were planning to do to him and his mother and starts to feel angry. But he quickly remembers Sylvia's words and decides not to let his negative emotions get the best of him and decides to follow them to the nearest human settlement. Then he thought that he should wait until the right time to save the girl and spent the whole time sitting on a tree branch. In the evening, he was surprised when he noticed that the wolves were obedient to the bandits and soon realized that it was some kind of magic after seeing the collars around their necks. He decided to take advantage of this and threw a bunch of rocks at them to force them to howl, and succeeded in luring the bandits and eliminating them one by one. And when he was facing the last one, the criminal decided to force him to accompany him, as he saw that he could make more money from him than he would make from the elf.
No, he's got a point.
The thief attacks him, but Arthur easily avoids him. When he thinks to attack him from a distance, the thief grabs his knife and reverses the attack. He ends up receiving a thunderous kick and falls to the ground. The thief then holds him down and thinks he has won. Arthur uses fire magic to burn his leg. After he manages to evade him, the thief is furious and decides to get rid of him and sell his body. But he ends up dead after Arthur sticks his knife in the center of his head. Then he approached the last thief and found him begging for his life, but Arthur didn't care about him. After he got rid of everyone, he went to the girl and freed her, but when he looked at her, he felt that something was wrong. After they got out of the carriage, the girl noticed that he was injured, and he realized that it seemed alarming for a normal child like her, and he thought that this was the first time he had met someone his age, and when she asked him what happened to the bandits, he just told her that they had had an accident.
Cap.
When he was about to leave, he found her clinging to his hand and begging him not to leave her alone. He told her that he had to go back to his family and that she would be safe because the forest was her home. But she told him that she was afraid of being eaten by tree monsters. Arthur decides to help her get back home. When he asks her if she knows how far she traveled after she was kidnapped, she tells him that she was chasing some bugs but got lost and doesn't know how to get home. Arthur remembered his previous life when he ended up in the shelter, and decided not to leave her alone in the woods. When he thought about riding the wolves, he found that he didn't know how to control them, and the elf decided to set them free and let them go. Arthur was worried that the wolves would attack them after freeing her from the magic of the bandits, but they ended up leaving quietly. Arthur decided to take her home and they spent time traveling together. As he tells her that she needs to eat so that she can continue her journey with him, he is surprised to realize that he speaks like Sylvia. When she asks him what he was doing in the forest, he tells her that he was separated from his family. He then asked about the situation in the kingdom of Alenoir, and she told him that it was an interesting place, and that she spent most of her time with her grandfather and her caretakers because her parents were always busy. As they continued on their way to the kingdom, Arthur felt that the journey was taking longer than expected. On the way, Tesha told him that she was going to train at her master's house after she activated her mana. Arthur sensed a suspicious movement behind him. It was one of the wolves watching them closely. At night, they began to hear a howling sound, and Arthur thought that he should have gotten rid of it as soon as he saw it. Then he asked Tesha to sit inside the tent while he took care of the wolf. When he was alone, he sat thinking about what Sylvia had given him. Then he found Tesha poking her head out of the tent to ask if it was okay for him to stay outside and let the monsters see that he was just a kid. Arthur realized that she was trying to convince him to go inside the tent because she was afraid to sleep alone. So he went inside the tent and sat down next to her. She told him that she had heard her grandfather tell her about humans and that males are perverted and prefer to take more than one wife.
Cap.
As he talked to her, he noticed that she had fallen asleep and realized what it was like to have a younger sister. As time went on, he noticed that she became more comfortable around him and was relieved that she had forgotten what had happened to her. Tesha went to find herbs to help him feel better, so he had no choice but to sit and wait for her. He soon realized he was in trouble when he found the wolf approaching him and he couldn't move. Tesha came back and he told her to run away immediately, but the wolf put a wild boar he had caught in front of him and left quietly. And Tesha told him that he was returning the favor because they had treated him well. Tesha gave him some mushrooms she had found along the way. And when it was time to go to sleep, she told him that she had heard stories about the human and dwarf kingdoms, but that the people of Alenoir did not trust the other countries because there were some bad people among them. The next day they continued their journey together and he found her asking him to call him by his first name as friends since they had spent a long time together. And then he remembered that he used to make enemies only in his previous life. Then Tesha told him that she found something on her way. And when he took a look, he was surprised to see a large tree emitting a bright light, and he found her extending her hand to him to accompany her inside. Arthur ends up being arrested by the elf army, who decide to get rid of him as an outsider, but Tesha intervenes and tells them to let him go because he saved her, but they insist on framing him and that he pretended to help her to brainwash her. Then an old man intervened and ordered them to release him. Arthur realized that he was Tesha's grandfather, who introduced himself as Furion and told him that he was the former ruler of the kingdom and expressed his gratitude to him for helping his granddaughter. And Arthur was shocked to learn that Tesha was a princess, and not just an ordinary elf. After that, he saw her parents arrive in the kingdom after learning that she was lost, and she ran towards them crying to tell them that she missed them. And Arthur realized that her parents were the king and queen of Alenoir, and when her father ordered the guards to arrest him, Furion told him that he was the one who saved his daughter, and Tesha asked them not to mistreat him. Her father was surprised when she decided to host Arthur in their castle, while Tesha got excited and approached him to tell him that she would share all her favorite meals with him, and her father was forced to agree to allow a human to enter his castle, while Arthur marveled that he sensed a mysterious power emanating from Furion. Tesha then took him on a tour of the kingdom, and on the way, everyone was staring at him, not accepting his presence among them because of their bad impression of humans, which made him not realize that he had the opportunity to see such a civilization with his own eyes. Then he felt the pain in his core again as he walked. He couldn't figure out why yet, but he thought that he shouldn't let his defense down while he was in the kingdom. After a while, they reached the castle and Tesha told the servants that she wanted to honor Arthur as a guest and that he wasn't as bad a human as they thought he was. As she began to think about what to do first, he told her that he wanted to talk about his coming here. Her parents agreed to have a conversation with him, and Arthur ended up sitting at the table with them. And Tesha's father told him that his name was Alwyn, the current king of Alenoir, and his wife, Queen Muriel. Arthur knelt in front of him and introduced himself. He told him that he grew up in a humble town in Sabine Kingdom and that he was not in a position to meet such a king. He expressed his gratitude that he had the opportunity to meet him and thought that he should not allow them to treat him like a child in order for the discussion to be useful. He began to tell them about what had happened to him and how he had been separated from his family, but did not mention his meeting with Sylvia. When he began to talk about his meeting with Tesha, he noticed that the atmosphere in the room had changed, and Alwyn was furious to learn that the bandits were planning to sell her to the slave traders, and he asked Furion if he should not be allowed to treat her as a child for the sake of discussion. When Furion asked him if he had begged the bandits or tried to negotiate with them to leave Tesha alone, he told him that he was a wizard, even though he was a child, and had used the force to save her and had succeeded in overcoming them on his own. The guards didn't believe him and wondered what a child like him could do. One of them accused him of tricking Tesha so he could sneak in here. She told him that Arthur doesn't lie and that she was indeed kidnapped by some bad guys. Alwyn decides to believe him, so Arthur asks him to help him get back to his family in exchange for his daughter, and Alwyn is surprised that he dares to ask, knowing the animosity they have toward his kind. Arthur told him that this is the reason why he decided to ask him, as he believes that the elves are peaceful beings since they accuse humans of brutality, and Alwyn remained silent after Arthur was able to give a logical reason for his request. Alwyn is forced to agree to his request, but the real issue is that the gate to the Sabine Kingdom won't open for 5 years, so he decides to have some of his soldiers take him home tomorrow. The pain returned to Arthur and he found that it was getting worse inside his body, and he wished that Sylvia was with him now to help him with what had happened to him. After he finished taking a shower, he went outside to get some air and felt the evening breeze relieve his pain. Then he thought that he had to find out why he was in such pain, and that's when he spotted Tesha standing on the opposite balcony with her parents, which made him wonder how his parents were doing and hope that they had managed to escape safely. Then he began to think about how they would react if they were reunited, as the thought of someone smiling at him and welcoming him back would have been unthinkable in his previous lonely life. Meanwhile, Tesha noticed him staring at them and went straight to him to apologize for her parents being rude to him at first. He told her he wasn't offended, that they had a right to be worried about her, and when she said she was sure his parents would want to check on him as soon as they saw him, he wondered if they would really be happy to see him again since they had gotten into so much trouble because of him and he couldn't protect them in the end. Tesha clapped him on the face to shake him out of his negative thoughts and told him that his parents were sad that they couldn't see him and expressed her sadness that he was leaving tomorrow. While they were talking, several fireflies appeared around them, making Arthur see the reflection of his parents. He wondered what he was fighting for. He remembered Tesha's expression when her guards caught him and couldn't explain what it meant. He felt selfish when he thought that she had betrayed him and lured him to her country to get rid of him because he was still fighting his old life with all its bad things. While they were contemplating the fireflies, they were surprised by a surprise attack. Arthur rushed towards the source of the attack, which turned out to be Furion. Arthur was surprised that he had just tried to attack them, and told him that it wasn't a real attack. But he wanted to make sure that he was really a slave trader killer, which he proved by responding immediately to the attack. Tesha was furious and told him to stop harassing him since he wasn't the kind of person he hated. He told her that he didn't come here to annoy him, but because he hadn't had someone this interesting in a long time. Then he summoned a sword and gave it to Arthur and pushed her away, and challenged him to a face-to-face duel. Arthur did not hesitate to attack him with the sword, and then he realized how strong and fast Furion was, and they continued to exchange blows, and Arthur tried to increase his speed with everything he had. But Furion ended up shattering the sword. The shattered blade almost pierced Tesha's body, but Arthur threw the sword at him to knock him down before he could reach her. Then he used his magical powers to face Furion, and as he approached him, he remembered the look in the eyes of the monsters he had seen on the battlefields in the past, and he succeeded in hitting Furion with a blow in the center of his head. Furion admires him and wants to continue the fight with him in the second round, but Tesha grabs his ass to force him to stop bothering him. While Arthur tells him that he is honored to get a compliment from him, and Furion tells him that he will become his student if he really means what he says. Arthur is surprised by his offer and tells him that his parents still don't know that he's alive. Furion assumes that there's a way to tell his parents that he's still alive. Arthur can't refuse, and suddenly the pain in his chest returns with more intensity. Furion realizes that he has inherited the will of the monsters and approaches him and tells him that he will die if he refuses to become his disciple. Arthur feels so heavy in his chest that he can't stand his heartbeat. Suddenly, something strange appears outside of him and he sees a huge dark monster approaching him. Arthur realizes that he is dreaming and that the monster represents his anxiety, or the weight of his responsibilities. Then he woke up to Tesha's voice telling him that her grandfather was waiting for him, so he had to change his clothes to meet him, and when she asked him if he really wanted to stay, he told her that he would make his decision after returning from the trip. Then they went out to meet Furion together and found her parents begging him not to get involved with him as he did not belong to them, and told him that it was against the customs to let him stay on their land. Tesha approached them and told them that Arthur had saved her life. Furion invited them to get into the carriage to begin their journey. On the way, Arthur wondered when they would arrive at their destination, and Furion noticed that he seemed sluggish. Tesha fell asleep on his shoulder, and Furion told him that she woke up unusually early because she wanted to know what was going to happen to him, and told him that she had lived a lonely life because of her position as heir to the throne, and that she had been let down by false friends. Furion liked the idea that she smiled spontaneously when she was with him, which he hadn't seen in a long time, and thanked Arthur for making her smile again. And Arthur felt that he was someone he could trust. After a while, they arrived at Furion's friend's house and were soon surprised to see Arthur and Tesha when they saw him kicking the door to force his friend to open it. And when he delayed his answer, he approached the door to hear if there was a sound nearby, but without realizing it, the door slammed in his face after his old girlfriend opened the door and called him a rude person. Furion introduced her to them and told them that her name is Reneia, and she is a witch with unique skills. Arthur realized that her spells do not belong to the 4 elements of magic like his mother, and when he entered her house, he found that she had hundreds of books and wondered how she would help him communicate with his parents. Reneia answered him that she is a fortune teller, and although she has special abilities, she cannot see anything in him, but she could see parts of his past and future. But he did not come here to hear a prophecy. Then she asked him to look at the bowl full of water in front of them and to imagine his parents and talk to them as soon as he saw them. And after she used her powers, he began to imagine them until their images became clear before him, and he imagined them eating dinner together and feeling sad about losing him on his birthday. Meanwhile, Reynold and Alice thought he had died because of them. Despite the success of their mission and their new home, it wasn't enough to overcome the grief of losing their son, and Reynold blamed himself for asking him to protect Alice and his brother. Suddenly, they heard Arthur's voice speaking to them somehow, and they couldn't believe it was real. But he told them that he was alive and well, and that he was in the elf kingdom of Alenoir, and using special magic to communicate with them. He then expressed his desire to return to them, but he can't do it right now because he needs treatment. He promised that he would return after he was fully recovered and asked them not to blame themselves for the accident because he would have made the same decision anyway. Reynold and Alice were overjoyed that he was still alive and able to communicate with them, while Arthur started crying because he missed them and wanted to go home as soon as possible and decided not to worry them like that ever again. Then told Furion that he agreed to become his student. Tesha then returned home and scolded Aldwin for wanting to expel Arthur from the kingdom, telling him that it would hurt their race in the eyes of the people. So he had to accept his presence among them when he saw that she was right, and told her that if he caused any trouble, he would not hesitate to expel him. Furion told him that he would personally supervise his education and take full responsibility. So Aldwin went and told Arthur that he was welcome in their land and apologized for his previous rudeness. Arthur was surprised by their sudden change in attitude towards him and then realized that Tesha and Furion were behind the change. Then Tesha asked her parents to let her take him around the kingdom, and they went out together to wander around, and Arthur marveled at her excessive enthusiasm and kept contemplating everything around him while Tesha ran, dragging him behind her. Arthur accidentally bumped into a passerby, and when he apologized, he found him expressing his disgust at him for being human, then realized who he was and told him that Furion liked him because humans had no place among them. And soon the children gathered around them and began to mock him and demand that he leave their land. Tesha suggested that they continue on and ignore them, but Arthur felt the urge to get rowdy and found the child approaching them and offered to accompany Tesha instead, telling her that his name was Ferret. When she refused, Arthur began to mess with him and infuriate him by saying his name wrong, and then left with Tesha after pretending to show respect for him and making him unable to respond. Before they left, Ferret decided to challenge him to a man-to-man duel for rehabilitation and warned him that if he backed down, it would reflect on the reputation of his mentor Furion, and Arthur found himself trapped in front of everyone waiting for his response. When Ferret found him silent, he decided to take him as agreeing to the fight and asked Tesha to judge them. Soon the fight started in front of everyone in the market, and Ferret rushed towards him to pounce on him, but he ended up falling to the ground after receiving a thunderous punch from Arthur. After Ferret lost consciousness, Tesha pulled Arthur away, and when he saw her smile, He realized that he had fallen in love with her without realizing it, and they spent their time visiting different shops and trying many things together. At the end of the day, Tesha asked him if he was excited to start his training under Furion and noticed that something was wrong with him. While Arthur remembered what Furion had already told him, that he does not train the weak, as he will train him to tame monsters, which will make him face many challenges in his daily life. Furion told him that the more he endured, the more experience he would gain. Despite this, Arthur decided not to back down, and Furion told him not to worry about the pain he felt from time to time. Arthur had the confidence to tell Tesha that he was looking forward to training under her grandfather since he had suffered so much to get to this point and had decided to make his own destiny. Tesha was excited and told him that she would do her best too. The next day Arthur began his first training with Furion, and as the days went by Arthur felt stronger and more mature, and realized that things would get harder the further he went. But he decided to focus on what he had to do for now because he believed that his future in this world would be an interesting one.